Hello and welcome to episode 21 of Film Stop. It's been a while, but we're back again, and today we're back with a very special episode. Also, a very special guest, a returning guest. Please welcome Mr. Bo Zhang. Hey, Bo. Okay, yeah, that's a little hint towards what we're going to be talking about later. Please do not do that again. So, as that hints you to, we're going to talk about Joker. But before we get to Joker, we're going to talk a little bit about Ad Astra. And we promise you there's a reason why we're talking about Ad Astra before we talk about Joker. We're not going to spend too much time on Ad Astra. Bo, I'm looking at you. But before we dive into the movies, guys, if you're still here, if you're still listening to us, please like, share, subscribe, rate, review, comment. Also, we're on Twitter, and we're trolling, so please follow us at FilmStop3. 3 because apparently there's like 2 others. Anyways, find us on Twitter, follow us, or join us on Facebook, and join the conversation.
You're on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been 2 weeks, but you know what? We're there. We're on there. We're on the Twitters. Anyways, Bo, let's get started with Ad Astra.
Yes.
So before we go into Ad Astra, you might have seen trailers of this movie again. It's a sci-fi movie, but for those of you who don't know, it's about the quick plot or synopsis is that 30 years ago, Clifford McBride led a voyage into deep space, but the ship and crew were never heard from again. Now, his son, a fearless astronaut, must embark on a daring mission to Neptune to uncover the truth about his father, or missing father, and a mysterious power surge that threatens the stability of the universe. This is starring Brad Pitt, Tommy Lee Jones, and Kimmy Shields. It is also directed by, I believe, the same director who made Lost World of Z. Yeah, Lost World of Z. James Gray. So, with that, Bo, let's start off with our first and very basic question. What's your sort of high-level thoughts of Ad Astra?
Ad Astra is fundamentally the story about the emotional, I don't know, what do you call it, the baggage, I guess, that Brad Pitt has with his father, Tommy Lee Jones, which is kind of an interesting image. But anyway, all that aside, it was not a bad movie, but it could have been a great movie. And the reason why we're talking about it now is that it kind of dovetails in with the conversation about the main feature of this particular podcast.
Yeah, and I think that, for those of you who have sort of watched any of James Gray's work, you kind of see that he tries to do some form of emotional studies. They're trying to study either a character going through some form of catharsis or some journey in a larger context. So in this case, Brad Pitt is going through his own form of sort of self-discovery or, whatever catharsis in the larger sort of context of space travel. And that's to do with him and his relationship with his father. And it's all great. It's all there.
Yeah, the emotional part's definitely, I would say, well-formed, and I don't really have any complaints with that. The complaints that I have with that particular movie are like, there's lots of good about it, but it's that there's certain parts of it that just stick out. It's like, why is this here?
Right, like the incessant sort of voiceovers, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of it's good if you're trying to keep the audience sort of updated with how your characters are feeling, but you don't. The common saying is less tell, more show. Right. You're trying to keep the audience sort of give the audience their own version of reality. That you don't need to spoon feed them every little detail. Which is unfortunately which is another theme that we will sort of explore when we talk about Joker here, but the studio sort of meddling. You can kind of see it. You can kind of see a big project like Ad Astra kind of becoming sort of the audience or the target market being brought into consideration while making the piece of art right after the studio watches the movie.
Yeah, you see literally the conversations happening. It's like, wow, this is a big sci-fi movie. Blockbuster cast. Maybe it needs an explosion here. I don't know if everyone's going to get quite what's going on with this emotional journey. Maybe we need to spell it out. And that's exactly, I would say that pretty much summarizes the pitfalls of that particular movie, which is a real shame because a lot of elements of that were very well done. Very well done. Cinematography, the tone, the pacing, a lot of it was but there was some parts I was like, really? Did you just call me an idiot?
And to be fair, another common theme actually between Ad Astra and Joker is that the leading men are great. I mean, I thought Brad Pitt was perfect for Ad Astra. He was I think equal measures of sort of underplaying and playing to the sort of emotions of the character as much as he needed it to.
Yeah, it was a very good performance. I wouldn't say perfect, but I mean, it's one you can't really criticize at any real measurable degree.
Well, and to be honest, like, you give someone like Brad Pitt a character like that, he's going to play the shit out of it. Yeah. It's the same as Joaquin Phoenix with Joker. Like, no one really doubted that they could do these things. I think that the place where the biggest, I guess, fault with Ad Astra for me is in the writing, but I'm guessing not in the script stage, but in the post-processing stage. When they were editing up the film, I think that's the place where kind of the really sort of, I guess, cracks in the wall start to appear as just the faulty writing.
Well, I don't know if I completely agree with that. I mean, the whole Mars sequence I thought it was like it was the writer kind of throwing the studio bones, like, Mars is classic. Mars has good imagery. We can try to make it work. That's what that felt like to me.
Fair enough. I guess there's a lot of discussion to be had about the sort of scientific plot holes or loopholes in the story, which is true because there's we're staying spoiler free, so we're not going to go into too much discussion there. But there's a lot of things that are kind of hand wavy, not explained, and I think I would have been okay with that because again, going back to the catharsis, the character journey is pretty strong. Yeah. If they would have only let us have our own sort of interpretation of all of the different emotions that Brad Pitt was feeling, because he can emote it all. You don't need to tell me what he's feeling in every moment.
Although, and not to bring in another movie, but my understanding is that the initial theatrical release of Blade Runner had Harrison Ford's voiceover over the whole thing, all those long kind of quiet scenes where it's very contemplative, and it does kind of remind me of that a little bit, at least the concept.
Okay, so what would you sort of recommend with Ad Astra? Do you recommend people go watch it in theaters and at home, not watch it at all, or where are you at?
I think it's worth a watch. Still, despite all the criticisms, and for this particular movie, I would say theaters is not a bad bet. I don't know how much longer it's going to be in theaters, but because of how vivid some of the imagery is, I would say theaters worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's if you're going in if you like sci-fi, right, and if you enjoy the visuals that come along with sci-fi, this is a very well done, visually speaking, sci-fi film. It's a lot of it is like you can definitely see sort of nods and homage to the 2001 and Solaris, but I would say that if you're going in expecting a sci-fi which is brilliantly written, then this might not be your fare. So I guess watch it in the theaters if those things apply. Yeah. With that, we will walk into our major portion of this podcast, which is Joker. That's more like his laugh.
I don't think it was as shrill as you, but whatever.
Okay, well, all right, whatever. So for those of you living under a rock, Joker is Here's a quick synopsis before we dive into the movie review. Forever alone in a crowd, failed comedian Arthur Fleck seeks connection as he walks the streets of Gotham City. Arthur wears two masks. The one he paints for his day job as a clown, and the guise he projects in a futile attempt to feel like he's part of the world around him. Isolated, bullied, and disregarded by society, Fleck begins a slow descent into madness as he transforms into the criminal mastermind known as the Joker. Guys, I did not give away any spoilers. This is literally the synopsis on Google right now.
Also, I've paid for some bad ad copy before. That is some really bad ad copy. Holy crap.
That's someone who just graduated from like English Lit and just had to put in all of the flair into that simple synopsis.
Yeah, that's a bad copy.
Okay, so the movie is a character study of a man who is a wannabe stand-up comedian who the world sort of kind of pushes into a place of no return, a point of no return. His life, his family, his circumstances all drive him into madness. And all of that is the crux. The DC, the Joker, the Batman, all of that is kind of the garnish, I would say. And that's we'll talk about that, but that's one of my big problems with the story too.
Yeah.
So Bo, let's start with what is your sort of high level overview of the movie?
Rating or overview?
Well, no, overview.
Overview?
No.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like in terms of plot points, I suppose that synopsis did cover it. But yeah, it is about. I would say this movie is very good at making you uncomfortable, which, quite frankly, a descent into madness should make the audience uncomfortable, and that was well done overall. And the reason why we talked about Ad Astra in the first part of this is that my major criticism of the movie, and I think Sarada's as well, is that it seemed like there were parts of it that were kind of put in because a committee of artistically challenged studio execs decided that, oh, hey, we should have this because, well, we gotta leverage the IP, guys.
Right.
We gotta leverage the money we spent on the DC IP. Anyway, we'll go into that in more detail, but yes, that would be my synopsis.
Yeah, I think... So, I mean, I agree with everything that Bo said. I think a couple other notes is that the movie has been shot really well. The movie is it really does make you feel all the sort of physical sort of I guess emotions and effects that they're trying to generate that the character is going through, whether it's claustrophobia or it's like disgust or it's just hurt, pain, all of that stuff. Very good at that. Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to agree with you. The imagery is very well... Like, if we want to go into the technical details, the imagery was very well done in terms of the use of color, the use of lighting, the use of freaking Joaquin Phoenix, for that matter.
Right. He's in every scene, almost every frame of the movie, and he commands the screen. Oh, yes, and also the contrast between him and some of the other characters. I mean, you know, it's like the whole, like... You might not notice it, but your brain will, type stuff. The score was very well done. Like, all those technical aspects are very well done. It's a very well-constructed movie overall on those kind of more technical aspects. However, we'll get to some of the writing. Yeah, and so I would kind of also cap that off by saying that this is directed by Todd Phillips, and he's a guy who made the Hangover series. And we were talking about this before the movie started, and I was skeptical about the way he would handle this, and I think that he's handled it pretty well. There's things that I see hindsight 2020, right? Like, I see things that could have been differently done, or I think that they could have been better at, but whatever. He's done a good job. He's handled if you look at it from the IP standpoint, if you look at it as a superhero movie or a movie that is set in the world of superheroes, I think it's a very well told character study. But I think they were going for something bigger than that. And
Yeah.
and I think with that in mind, we'll talk about the spoiler-filled discussion. But before we get there, Bo, what's your sort of high-level rating of the movie? What do you recommend this movie in the theaters, at home, not at all?
I would recommend it at home, and not because it's not a good... Well, okay, here's the thing, is that the theatrical experience is what's on screen and what your fellow watchers of
Yes.
the movie
Yes.
do. And, you know, to a certain degree, it's almost like a credit to it that it makes people uncomfortable.
Yep.
But people react when they're uncomfortable by laughing inappropriately, and yeah, just watch it at home, guys, especially if you have a good theater system.
I slightly disagree with Bo on that one. I think that I was actually one of the people that I kept telling Bo, I was like, I'm not comfortable with the way people are reacting to this movie right now. If it's a movie that... Okay, let me take a step
back. You
back.
guys know I hate people.
Take a step back. I guess if you're the kind of person who gets affected by movies, who gets affected by communal watching of a movie, where like the way people are reacting to it affects how you react to a movie, then maybe don't watch it in the theaters, because the movie does have a very strong undercurrent of like obviously it's about mental sickness, and so there is a lot of that, and there's a lot of violence and gore in the movie. So if all of that affects you, then don't watch it in the theaters. But if it doesn't, then I highly recommend watching it in the theaters and actually watching it with a bunch of people, because it's really interesting, because the movie is talking about some it's doing a social commentary on a bunch of things, but while watching it, it's kind of like an experiment. We're like just watching it with all these people who are reacting in different parts of different ways, and it's kind of like, why are you reacting that way, or why aren't you reacting this other way?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going in as a psych student, I guess, sure. But,
It's interesting, is what I'm trying to say, and it's a movie, so don't let it affect you. But that's our high level sort of rating of the movie. Anything else you want to say before we dive into the spoiler-filled discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're not watching the opening weekend, then yeah, maybe a theater is a better experience, but sure. Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad. Yeah, it's worth the $8 or $10 or whatever the theater ticket is.
Okay, alright, so guys, spoiler warning if you have not watched The Joker.
Spoilers!
We're gonna dive into full-on spoiler section here, and well, let's just do it. Alright.
Yeah.
So, do you think, Bo, that... Okay, you mentioned writing, right? Let's start with writing. What do you think about Joker as a... I'm not even going to go into the movie that you watched. If you just think about the script that was written, imagining that the studio was not involved, what's your sort of high-level sort of takeaway of what they were trying to go for with this story?
Okay, I mean, yeah, they were trying to... Yeah, I mean, my take is that they were trying to do, kind of what you said before, a character study of, like, what it would take to kind of create a character that is like that Joker in the classic DC universe. You know, this agent of chaos, mercurial, just kind of crazy, right? And crazy is the best word. It's in terms of the character itself, it's not over. In some ways, it is very different from, you know, maybe some of the other very well known and well thought of portrayals of the Joker, such as, you know, Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, but not necessarily in the character. Like, you could tell the same character, but it was looking at it from a different point of view, and the point of view was from the Joker
from his point
Joker.
of view, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
And that, I would say they were largely successful.
Mm-hmm.
But there were parts that were in the movie because I think they wanted to use the... And yeah, we're talking about spoilers.
Right,
so let's go with it.
Yeah, so the biggest issue that I found with the writing was that they kind of, like, force-fed the whole Bruce Wayne connection, the Batman connection, and I think that whole section, actually, if you even took it out, it wouldn't have, to me, it wouldn't have affected Joker's journey as much as having it there, you think, would affect. Because it's like, it's going back to the Ad Astra comment, whereas the studio is kind of like, you know what? We're making a Joker movie. We don't have Batman in this. Can we somehow just do a Batman? And then the negotiation sort of ended with all right, fine, we'll do a Bruce Wayne as a kid, and they still had to go into at the end. Both Bo and I called it in the middle of the movie. We were like, you know what? This is going to end with the parents dying. You know that's going to happen.
And here's my thing: is that even if they had Thomas Wayne in the movie, largely in the role that he was in, but they didn't force feed Bruce Wayne or the actual showing of him getting shot, that would have been fine, right? Okay, it's grounded in the universe, sure. He would have been a person at the time.
Right.
And he
was an influential person.
Yeah, and he would have kind of personified the role that the movie made him in. So that worked, except for the fact that they just went too far. They were like, hey, audience, you guys are a bunch of room temperature IQ morons.
Yes.
We need to shove this down your throat. I don't like things being shoved down my throat.
Right. Okay.
Anyway.
No, I agree. I think that I wanted Joker to be someone who existed in that universe, but I didn't want him to be connected to Batman. Just because Batman is a important figure in that universe, I don't want to know that every other person is connected. Every other important person is connected to Batman in that universe.
Yeah, because that's been done, right?
Right.
Dark Knight did that very well.
Right. But the good thing about Dark Knight's the way they handled Joker was that they didn't really spend too much time on how Joker and Batman are somehow, some way connected.
Well, I see what you're saying, but I understand what you're saying. I disagree with the actual words that you said. But anyway, to move on to that, I mean, that connection was not necessary, right? Is that if you're going to make this a character study about the Joker becoming the Joker, then make that. Don't make it about that. And oh, by the way, it's in DC and it ties in with the rest of the universe.
Yeah, and they were clearly building up to a central arc in the story, which would almost like a pivotal point where Joker sort of completely transcends into his madness. And it's unfortunate that it all had to make it so that Arthur Wayne is actually possibly. Thomas Wayne, sorry. I keep forgetting their names. Thomas Wayne is actually Arthur's father. That portion, or maybe not, or maybe he is, which probably he is because he has that photo of Joker, or of his mother, which says, with love by TW on the back of it. But that aside, I didn't want the core reason why Joker goes into madness be connected back to Batman. That's what kind of annoyed me. I was like, no.
See, I was okay with that part because it didn't actually turn out. I mean, in I think a more straightforward. I mean, I understand kind of what Siraj is saying there, but in a more straightforward interpretation of the movie, it turns out that that's not really the case.
No. But he is. The what they're going for with the story, he definitely is the guy who impregnated her and then put her through the rigmarole.
I disagree with that because I think there's a certain sense in which it's almost like it's saying that the various, I guess you could say, positive aspects of his life, or the parts that kind of kept his head above water, mentally speaking, they all kind of turned out to be to some degree a bit of a fantasy or an imagination or whatever. They were the things that were unraveled through the course of the movie, and I think it's for me, a better understanding of it, in my opinion, of course, that, they were all, in fact, not real.
All right.
I see what you're saying.
So every time the Joker had some form of a hallucination or daydreaming sequence, which that's a different discussion altogether, but he the director made a very clear point of coming back to reality and showing you that, hey, he was actually dreaming of all these things, or hey, he was actually hallucinating. Like Zazie Beetz' portion where she just vanishes from all the sequences where she was actually there, doing a very Fight Clubby sequence.
Yeah, I wish they didn't do that.
Yeah, I wish they didn't do that either. But anyways.
Well, okay, but on the other hand, I wish they made the initial sequences somewhat more subtle. They couldn't have done that.
Right, but like the fact that they did that tells me that him looking after killing his mother, looking at the photo, and then turning it around and seeing "I love your eyes" or whatever TW, is their nod at like knowing to him too that hey, maybe there was a lot more reality there than what seemed to him. And
I see what you're saying, but I didn't take that away.
And
I disagree.
I think I also I also think that this is my opinion, but I think that like what the writer was trying to go for, what the director was trying to go for, was how nothing in Gotham City is clean. Like, I mean, the whole analogy to the sewage or the garbage guys being on strike is basically that Gotham City is filth. And the filth is across the board, and I think even Thomas Wayne or the Waynes are not clean of the filth. I think that's what he was going for with that.
Well, yes, but a lot of that was also tied into this kind of quasi-political commentary that was in the movie.
And let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's jump right into that. So there was this whole kind of like, I don't know, like Occupy Wall Street, you know,
right.
Kill the rich, Antifa, whatever, like kind of vein in there that I think, well, in the discussions coming out of the theater, we were both somewhat uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like, okay, I understand that that's part of the zeitgeist to a certain extent, but just kind of jumping in there.
You gotta earn it.
Yeah.
You can't just, like, milk it because it's in the zeitgeist.
Right. They didn't really do much to really make... I mean, they kind of tried, but not really, to make that a thing. Like, that, it was kind of almost taken for granted.
Yeah, and then I think the other side of that is that they were trying to... What I think is that they were trying to do this very intimate, very small budget, indie character study, and then they were on one hand, and then on the other hand, they were trying to manage this IP-related project, and in the middle, they were stuffing all of this, like, commentary, social commentary. So it's like, you know, tonally, you want to try to be one thing instead of being everything for everyone. And I think that also kind of leads me to the other point, which is, you know, if you're talking, I think one of the commentaries that they were trying to make was about mental illness, of course, because it's about that. I feel like if you're doing that, then I think you owe it to the topic or the subject to kind of delve deeper into one aspect of it than to superficially sort of hit all of them and kind of like make a potpourri of like, oh, when someone goes mad, it's like all of these things.
Yeah.
It's kind of treating it very lightly, but at the same time sort of saying that, you know what, we're treating it lightly because it's a comic book movie after all. You can't have best of both worlds.
There's a lot of sense in which they kind of try to have it both ways, and that was probably the worst aspect of that movie.
All right, let me ask you this. So the movie ends with Joker seemingly in Arkham Asylum or a asylum.
Yeah.
And we see Bruce Wayne's parents killed yet again in a DC movie. Do you think...
That's where, like, you know, it's like a race between Thomas and Martha Wayne and Uncle Ben on who can die the most in a comic book movie.
Well, okay, before I actually get into the question, I was going to ask you this, but did you actually notice that they had two shots, two that I noticed, that were either like some sort of Easter eggs or reference back to or nods of like older Batman movies? So one was the Joker holding the camera, like when he was talking straight to the people through the camera. That was very like Heath Ledger Joker. And the other one was the pearls flying off. The mother.
Definitely the pearls. Schneider. Definitely the pearls. I see what you mean about the Heath Ledger one, but like, well, yeah, I guess it is like 10 years ago now. All right, well, maybe it is older.
No, I mean, Yeah. Okay. So the question I was going to ask you is that do you think we're going to see this Joker again in the world of the Batman that now, like, there's a new Batman world that they're creating with Matthew Reese at the helm of it? Do you think and just so you know, and our listeners know, they're basically doing Batman from a noir perspective, from a Detective Comics perspective. Do you think that we will see this Joker again in the DC universe, or is this a one and done?
I think it would be better as a one and done.
I agree, but this movie's going to do a lot of money, as we already know. It's going to kill it at the box office.
Yeah, I mean, you know, power of money, sure. I'm not going to, and, you know, if Joaquin wants to do another one because, hey, money talks, I'm not going to, clown on him or anything. Yeah, you know, hey, okay, sure. But he doesn't seem like that type of actor.
I don't think he will. He's a very temperamental guy. And, yeah, I don't think he will either. But if they were to bring Joker back in, what's the story that you would like to see? What's the arc that you would like to see? Also, here's the other part of that question. It's going to be competing arcs, right? If you bring Joker into a Batman story, this Joker into a Batman story, it's going to be a competing arc. How do you see that playing out?
I don't. I really... I'm sure you can create something, but it's hard to imagine something like that. In a certain sense, it almost makes... The movie would almost be better in some ways if it wasn't connected with the DC IP. Because, there's nothing... It didn't need to be. Let's put it that way.
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if this was if they framed it differently, this was a different, a retelling of, Falling Down or something, okay, sure. I mean, wow, I wouldn't have made the money, but...
Right, that's the thing. It wouldn't have made the money. You and I maybe would have gone and watched it, but the other people in the theater, probably half of them would not have watched it had it not been a Joker movie. Which is, unfortunately, where we're at with IP and stuff. I think that if this Joker is going to make his way back into the Batman universe or DC universe in what they're going for, I think that they cannot have a Batman only story. It cannot be an arc of what I'm trying to say. It has to be a two protagonist arc.
The problem with I think the DC universe as far as Batman goes is that no one's pretty much told the emotional story of Batman as well as anyone's going to, at least in the foreseeable future, right? So it's almost where are you going to go with that?
Yeah, and I'm assuming that, let's say, again, the guy who's directing the next series, let's assume that he's really good. He's a good director. He's directed the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes series, the new ones, and he's really good at it. I just don't know how they can justify, because, if you read the newspaper clippings that they have in the movie, the subliminal messaging, so to say, they are pitting Joker as a vigilante. But that's the whole point of Batman. He's the vigilante in Gotham. So when the last two shots, you have Joker walking away after he kills his shrink, and you have Batman or Bruce Wayne standing after his mother and his dad are laying on the floor or ground. You see what they're heading towards with this, but I cannot see a story where it's as simple as one is the antagonist and the other is protagonist. That would just be such disservice to this entire movie. What they're trying to do with this.
No. Yeah, maybe. It's part of that, but it's also that, what are you... where are they going to go? The problem with the DC... Okay, here's where we're going to contrast Marvel and DC a little bit, as far as the movies go, is that Marvel movies tonally are very consistent overall.
Sure.
Whereas none of the DC movies are. They're all kind of in their own little sub worlds, so to speak.
Which is not a bad thing, because they need to do their own thing. They can't do what Marvel is doing. You can't just replicate what Marvel is doing and hope for it to work.
Right. I mean, and that makes sense, but, like, the other part of that is that why do they need to be in a coherent world?
Sure.
I mean, at this point, like, honestly, in a lot of ways, the DC IPs are stronger in that more people understood Batman or Superman before the movies than people understood Iron Man or Thor or whatever before the movies.
Sure.
So why? I mean, it's almost more like James Bond, where it doesn't need to be coherent.
Mm-hmm.
So why make it? Why try to force it into some kind of coherence?
I agree. I agree with that. All right, let me ask you another question. Do you think Joaquin Phoenix deserves an Oscar for this movie?
Ooh. That's a really good question. He definitely deserves a nomination. I don't.
You know, probably Brad Pitt is going to be there with Ad Astra.
Yeah.
In the same zone, and I actually don't know if I can pick one over the other, because
I would pick Brad Pitt.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree, because there's something difficult.
Well, you didn't 5 seconds ago.
Well, I was thinking about that, but it's like it's one of those things where the obvious answer is Joaquin Phoenix, but it's easier
to
hype externalize and to overplay a character than to I'm not saying that Joaquin Phoenix did not internalize the character, but
Joaquin Phoenix did a very good job. But it's you know what? Like, I'll just say it. It is harder for me to emotionally relate to someone going crazy, because I have never gone crazy. Mm-hmm. But everyone has a father, and like that is much easier for me to relate to. So,
well, that, and I think that,
and everyone's got daddy issues, whether they want to admit it or not.
That's one part of it, but the way Brad Pitt plays it is the other part of it. It's like,
that's true.
The writing is an important part of it, but I think the way Brad Pitt plays the character to a very, it's a. I'm not.
Let me try to rephrase that. It's easier for me to tell whether the acting's good or not, because it's somewhere that you've been before.
Yep.
Right? To some degree. Or it's easier to place yourself in that place.
Yep. All right. So we are at a point where Joker's going to make a lot of money.
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of discussion about Joaquin Phoenix going to the Oscars. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about pitting Joker against Endgame. If you were allowed to pick the best superhero movie of the year, we're not even going to talk about Captain Marvel, and Spider-Man Far From Home was okay, but it's not in the league.
No.
If I asked you to pick one of the two for best superhero movie of the year, what would you go with?
God, that's a tough one. So Endgame is a difficult movie for me, because I kind of view it almost like Return of the King, in that itself by a movie is almost the wrong way in some ways to judge it, because it's not a single movie; it's a tie-up of multiple movies.
Yep.
And in that respect, I would say Endgame, but man, it's not a. See, this would be a much easier conversation if they made Joker the better version of Joker that we all kind of wish we would have seen in theaters. And not to say that it's bad, it's more that it's frustrating, because like it's almost there, like, but for like less than a half a dozen things, really.
It's literally it's like literally there for 94%.
Yeah,
and it's not there for the rest. And I almost think that it's shy of greatness. Joker is shy of greatness as a superhero movie, as a character study, as a studio movie, which seems like an indie movie. Do not be confused; it's definitely a studio movie. I have to say it's Endgame, just because the feat that they've achieved with Endgame is way beyond what... I'm not, and this is not me kicking Joker to the side, it's just basically saying that Joker has a long way, or DC has a long way to go before they can achieve what Marvel did with Endgame. And if I'm to pick one, because they both released the same year, if I'm to pick one as a better superhero movie, I'm just going to pick Endgame because of its background.
Although, I mean, you could also make the argument that Joker shouldn't be viewed as a superhero movie, period.
You could have if they wouldn't have utilized the IP in the way that they have.
That's true.
I would have totally agreed with you, but they've banked on that IP.
Yeah.
So, anyways, any final thoughts?
Studios. I know you got to make your money, but stop. Like, come on, guys. Come on. Don't talk to me like I'm an idiot, because I'm not.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree with you. I hope that I stand corrected in thinking that Todd Phillips does not have a style or a signature. He does. He has a tone. He has something to say, and I'm sure that at a point when he gets to make something that is not either IP ridden or franchise or studio heavy, he's going to kill it, and I'm excited to see what he does next. This movie fell short of greatness, but that's okay, because it was still a good watch, and I think you guys should go and watch it if all of those things that we've talked about. Oh, wait, you've already probably watched it because we were talking about spoilers.
I mean, unless you're just a masochist.
Right, that's true. Anyways, so with that, we come to the end of this episode, and I really thank you guys for joining us and staying with us. As always, if you have any thoughts, you can email us at filmstoppodcast@gmail.com. And if you have any thoughts towards Bo, you can send them at, what's that again?
Oh, yes. I don't care about your opinions. At gmail.com.
Gmail. All right, cool. And guys, like, share, subscribe, rate, review, comment, please. And follow us on Twitter. Like I said, FilmStop3. Thanks again, and hope to catch you soon. Bye.